Welcome everybody to the Norton Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. Again, this is a hybrid public meeting, so members of the public are welcome to participate in person or remotely. In person, we are at Norton Town Hall on 72 East Main Street in the Crane Room. It's also available to join via the Zoom app using the meeting ID linked in the agenda posted, or meeting ID 638-929-1060. The meeting will also be available on Norton Cable Access after the fact and the Norton Media Center's YouTube page. For future sessions, please feel free to email questions for the board ahead of the meeting to Brian Carmichael, town staff, so they can be entered into the record or forwarded to the board ahead of the meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order here and go into our general business. I will note to everybody that after we get through these first couple of quick bullet points, the board will be moving into an executive session with town council, and then we'll be returning to the rest of our agenda. I realize that I don't want to keep everybody waiting here, but the direction that we've gotten from town staff and everybody else is that we should get town council off of the clock that we're paying them as quickly as possible, so that's what we're going to do. So in terms of planning board business and policies, thank you everybody for signing the Form E relating to our decal drive decision in our last session. I will pass around, after we get back from executive session, 3 bills, 3 bills, one related from a grant for the zoning recodification and 2 other ones. And we will also have 1 set of minutes to approve from our December 17th meeting, and then we'll also go through a strategy to attack the rest of the minutes that Brian had shared. So, does anybody have anything else that they would like to discuss prior to us moving toward executive session?
Motion to go to executive session.
So pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, again, to discuss strategy relating to pending litigation known as Pursuant Home Builders LLC versus Griffin et al. Bristol Superior Court, 2473 CB 00396. If the chair declares that discussing the matter in open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position to the board, a vote to go into executive session is expected, and votes may occur in the executive session. And this also will relate to the pending litigation known as Premier Fence LLC versus Town of Norton Planning Board et al., Massachusetts Land Court 24 MISC 000730. So I do declare that discussing the matter in open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board. So I'll ask if the board would like to, so I'll make that motion. Would anybody else like to second? And can we go through any further discussion on the motion to go into executive session?
Oh, my bad, I think I thought it stayed.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So the board will now move into an executive session in an adjoining room. We will rejoin this session after the executive session is concluded. Thank you, everybody.
Wait.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Again, this is just a confirmation that the board is now returned from our executive session and will now be returning to the continuation of our public agenda here. Just give us 1 second to get everybody back here seated. And we can continue. Paul, I don't see the applicant for 22 Maple Street right now. I think they may have taken a walk. Did you want to just give an overview of what we're looking at on 22 Maple Street?
Okay, I just need to also get back onto Zoom.
Sure.
But this was one you actually saw a few months ago and had concerns and did not endorse it. Because this property was split zoned and it didn't reflect that on it. And so you wanted to bring it back ahead and put this up on Zoom?
Sure, please.
Just trying to-
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but
Yeah, I'd like to just get this up on, so everyone can see it.
the wonders of technology never cease.
Right. It's time. Here we go. It'll be popping up on the screen any second now. You may recall this one on Maple Street. There were 4
Perfect.
lots. And they have now identified the zoning split where residential, you can see along Maple Street, there's the line, if you can follow my cursor, it's running along, splitting between residential 60, I believe, and then industrial.
Okay. So again, they're just looking to split lot A, lot B, C, and D.
Oh.
And they do all have the required frontage,
They
clearly they have access.
They have frontage and the lot sizes are all falling within the zoning district requirements.
Okay. Additional comments, questions, concerns?
Looks like they also included the marijuana overlay.
Okay.
Portion of lot D will be within the overlay.
You're saying that they did include that in the map that you were doing?
Yeah, the one I'm looking at, if you see just to the right of the wetlands, you can see the line of the
Mhm.
marijuana overlay district.
Okay. Further comments, questions? And for A&Rs, the motion is to endorse.
Motion to endorse A&R 9 for 22 Maple Street.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of endorsing the A&R, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So we do have the copies here. We'll lay those out on the table in the back so that we can all sign those before we leave. Please do not leave before you sign. Okay. And now we can continue on, and I think the reason that we have a few people here in the Zoom room with us here is a continuation of our discussion about the MBTA overlay district. Paul, I know you prepared a bit of a presentation here just to go through timing as it relates to town meeting articles and different things, and a preliminary look at the outputs that we got from the open house that we had. So if you want, you're already up on screen, so I'll stop talking.
Okay, I just want to first I want to thank everyone who came out to this event about a month ago. We probably had close to 30 people, and we had, I think, great conversations, great participation. And what I'm going to focus on primarily in the discussion are primarily the top 2 vote-getting sites. And what I want to do is just, before we get to that, talk about timeframes. Now, the Select Board hasn't quite finalized the timeframes for the May town meeting, but we do know the town meeting is May 19th, and we do have to submit articles on February 11th at 4 p.m. That's just placeholder language. It's not the 100% language. It's just getting the language on the warrant. So what that means is your next meeting, we need to vote to transmit this, actually, as well as the recodification you know, I say unfortunate because you're also meeting February 11th, but it's, the articles are due at 4 PM, so we wouldn't be able to do that in time. So we're gonna have to do that at your next meeting. So,
And just to clarify, placeholder language means the planning board would like an article that says, that talks about this,
right,
and that's all we need to have.
it's a sentence, and then obviously it'll, as we go through this process, because February to March, you will be refining your parcel selection, and we will be looking at some text recommendations. And then March, April, this board then comes back and has a public hearing. We will notify abutters of the selected parcels, and you all will make a recommendation to town meeting on the parcels, as well as any, as well as the text that's associated with this. So for tonight, we're going to be focusing on parcels, and based on the areas that were looked at, or identified a month ago. So what I want to do is just do some comparison looking at these sites. I'm going to go over briefly the existing conditions of each of these areas, and through mathematical computation, it's not even that difficult, but look at what the potential development of these areas are, and then I'd also like to show what the net potential development is, because these areas already have existing development, a lot of existing residential. And then we had a couple of members who also provided some additional recommendations that we can go over as well. So again, one of the big things I'm doing tonight is trying to identify what the potential number of units are. I think the best thing I can say is I want to try to get us in the ballpark. So what I did essentially was I looked at each of the potential parcels, you know, for a start within these areas, and multiplied it by 16 units to try to gauge, which was what we did when we did the compliance model, but just to try to get us some sense of if something were to redevelop, what would that be? But this also doesn't factor out wetlands, parking, and some other things, so it in some cases will overestimate the numbers, but it also doesn't factor if something comes in higher than 16 units, so it could underestimate. But I think one of the things that helps keep us in the ballpark is, particularly the top two areas, the lots are fairly small, so fluctuation shouldn't be that great because lot size can have a lot to do with limiting what you can do. Once you all give me the direction of where you'd like to go with the parcels, SERPID, which is our regional planning agency, will actually run the official compliance model again. I do want to say I've talked this over with the folks at SERPID, and they said that basically I was in the ballpark of what that compliance model is, but the numbers I present are not the official compliance model. First I want to start with Norton Glen. It was the #1 vote getter at the meeting. First, the students that come from Norton Glen go to Nurse Elementary School. That was something that you all, as a board, wanted to know, where are the students going? So if they go to Nurse.
What is the
Sewer is available at this site. Sewer currently serves it. It's zoned residential 80 and in the Water Resource Protection District, which of course residential 80 is an 80,000 square foot lot size minimum. There are 150 affordable housing rental units, all of which are counted as part of our subsidized housing inventory. The average lot size is about an acre, roughly. They're somewhere in the 40,000 square foot to an acre. These apartments would become conforming under MBTA zoning, because right now this area wouldn't be conforming because the lot sizes are too small and multifamily is not allowed even by special permit in R80 zoning. So you would be allowing them to become compliant. The other thing I just want to mention, just on current conditions, is this is one property owner, and so there's one plan of development. I also should point out, I did reach out, I mailed a letter to PRI Norton Glen, notifying them of this meeting, the potential for it. I haven't heard from them, but as we go through the further selection, I'll reach out, I'll give a heads up to all the properties, and then eventually, as we have to notice this, I'll notify everybody again. I just want to do a little bit more than what's required. So this area, all the properties owned by PRI, it's about 27 acres, which exceeds the minimum 25 requirement by the state under the NBTA. So when you look at the 27 acres and multiply it by 16, the ballpark is about 430 potential units, if something were ever to happen here.
And that's,
Something we want.
and that is tear everything that's there down and replace it and build it up to maximum capacity.
Correct.
Okay.
And there are 150 existing units already, so if you subtract those out, you'd be netting about 280. One thing I want to mention too about this site that I think would mean you wouldn't see the maximum potential units is if you follow the cursor, there are some odd-shaped lots on the north side that would really limit whatever, any development that could happen back there. And on the south side of Norton Glen, my cursor's disappeared, you can see on the map, well, you might not see it clearly, but there are some wetlands there. So that would limit development into those areas. So
I think could, in theory, do an A&R and fix the weird lot shapes anyway.
they could, but as I look at this, it looks like it was a maximum lot layout, which engineers are good at doing. So
Okay.
that's Norton Glen in a nutshell. The next site I'm going to look at, I'm going to spend a little bit more time, hopefully I'll go quickly, is Mansfield Ave. This was the number 2 vote getter. And what I'm showing here on this, on the map to the left is what I would call the big net version of it. You have a lot of options here. First, I want to point out I did not include the PGA Charities site, the one that went to town meeting, based on the comments we received. I also didn't include the one on the south, which we didn't include. I didn't put that in here for roughly the same reason that people didn't seem to be happy with that. But just for continuity, I included some larger sites, which I wouldn't suggest that we take this all as it is here, but we have the Norton Estates Co-op Mobile Home Park on one end, which is big, and then on the other end, we have the Greatwood Shopping Center. Actually, I just want to go through real quick what the uses are. There are 4 single-family lots up at on the north end of this, and then we have 2 lots just south, which are commercial lots. One's the Cumberland Farms and one's the Canna Marijuana, and of course the mobile home park. Then when you jump across Mansfield Ave, the top 2 parcels, the planning board just recently approved.
That's the IBEW.
That's the IBEW training facility. Just south of there is that commercial development that has multiple uses in it. It used to have a gymnasium. That actually has an approved 40B on it that's never been built. It was 60 units. Then the next 2 lots, you have Alberto's and then a vacant site. And then the town has the kayak launch site right near that. And then all of these parcels under it, about 14 of them, those are fourplexes. And then just south of that, we have an oil delivery company called Order My Oil. And then right next to that is the big Norton Link.
The 40B.
The 40B, 100 units, that is soon to be taking in residents. And then you have the big shopping center. So sorry, I wanted to get through that. Just to give some context, I think what's important here too is there's only, well, essentially now 1 lot that's vacant. There's 3, but we know 1 should be developed as that training facility. The existing apartments, the quads that are there, would become conforming under MBTA. They're not, because commercial doesn't allow multifamily. One thing I also want to point out is there's quite a few lots, 14 lots that are under half an acre. And then 6 lots are between half an acre to an acre. And then you have 12 lots that are, more than an acre. And I bring that up because, again, this area has many smaller lots. And many of those lots, most of those lots are owned by different property owners. I want to dive into that in just a second. But as far as the calculation of the potential impact of this, again, taking the big option first, the wide net, including Great Woods and Norton Estates, this whole area is about 74 acres. You could add about 1,190 potential units, again, based on the 16 units an acre. There are 289 existing units, and the net would be about 900. But if you take out the two, Great Woods and Norton Estates, it's down to 32 acres. And now the potential is 509 units with 168 units, and then the net would be 341. So I just want to dive into that net a bit more, because much of this is just a number crunching exercise, and we have to what we're trying to do here is also put in potential reality of things actually happening. And I put this slide up because it's important that, the numbers that I show you are lots that are all calculating potential development, but the reality is a lot of these sites we probably won't see it or anytime soon. I won't say it will never happen, I can't do that, but at least like with the 2 parcels up at where the IBU has their
A brand new building.
brand new building going.
Brand new building, they're gonna be building.
Right.
It's not done.
Right, so 77 units there. Order My Oil just opened, within the last 10 years. You can see some of these, the town site. The town is working to work with the state to fund a parking lot to help improve public access to the water. We have a Cumberland Farms. We have 2 40Bs that were approved, one's about to be built. And so if you took those off the calculation, now you're reducing by almost 300 units that could potentially be built.
But you could add back wheat.
We'll
Okay.
get there.
I'm just saying you could get that back.
So if you reduce everything from that main number there, you could be looking at Mansfield Ave at about 200 net potential units.
And that's net development. That's not necessarily net that would count for the state, correct?
Right. That's the state doesn't look at that number. The state doesn't look at your net. They just want to see what overall.
The state is not going to take points away because the IBEW building is there.
No, they will not.
So-
They've been clear about that.
Yeah.
There are some circumstances where you can't go to certain properties, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the other thing I wanted to mention too is, as we know, there's a lot of property here still, the 4 units, the single families. So I looked at, these factors that influence if an area is subject to redevelopment. Now, we didn't do a redevelopment study, don't have numbers, I wish we did, but these are the things that are often factors that can help determine if an area will redevelop. And one of them, an important one, is whether or not your land value exceeds the value of your building. So look at your property tax bill, you'll see assessments for your land and assessments for your building. So I looked at all of the properties here, and with the exception of the vacant parcel, which of course doesn't have a building on it, and Norton Estates, all the other sites have buildings that are more valuable than the land.
And then this is focused just on Mansfield Ave?
This is just the Mansfield Ave, yes. I looked at the Norton Glen, and they're all above 2. But, and then there's the Order My Oil site, which is nearly equal. Just wanted to point that out. There was a very close, But another factor is zoning. This area is already zoned commercial, which is pretty permissive and promotes development and redevelopment. Adding the MBTA zoning would make it more attractive, and it also has water and sewer. You see some other factors like building condition, but I can't do that, but I can tell you it's factored into the building value. And then things like market demand and return on investment are things. I just don't have that information, but the thing I'm most focused on is that land value and building value. If this area was showing a higher amount of land value to building, then I would say, oh, we could see a lot of redevelopment. We could, but the numbers don't seem to show that.
There's not an obvious terrible house on a good lot.
Right. Sometimes, like if you looked at the Reed and Barton site, that building's worth a lot less than the land under it. Another thing I wanted to show is how many properties have contiguous properties with the same ownership. And there's three areas. One I've already mentioned, which is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers that it looks like they're going to be building a training site. And we also have, the two properties where Alberto's and the vacant site next to it, that's under one owner. And then you have 3 parcels at the bottom of South Mansfield. 3 of the quads are owned by one person. And they actually own another parcel, but not contiguous. But those 3 down there are pretty small sites. I mean, if that were to redevelop as one, it really wouldn't trigger a significant increase in development. So I just bring this up because it would be unlikely, based on current conditions, that you would see a large-scale development here, particularly because of all the different property owners. Not saying it couldn't happen, but it's going to be a lot harder to do. And a lot of these parcels are pretty small to begin with. I just want to speak just real quickly on small lot sizes, that especially in this area from Mansfield, I think there's a real benefit of having existing smaller lots, because I know people can see images of big apartments and they think that's 15 units an acre, but 3 units on a 10,000 square foot lot is 15 units an acre. And I should say a lot is 43,560 square feet. So 5 units on a 14,500 square foot lot is also 15 units an acre. And I think having some of these small sites could be really advantageous for the town, because it really would much more neatly fit in with community character and promote something that we call gentle density, which is being able to add incrementally, more housing and a variety of housing in an existing neighborhood without significantly impacting the characteristics of it.
Yeah, we'll go to public comment in just a second, if that's okay. Thank you.
And this is just another example of small lots. These are, again, potential units that could be on these small lots. That's not even the net, but again, I think it's advantageous. And then with this slide, this is just showing if you combine Norton Glen with the few options, but I'll just talk about Mansfield without Norton Estates and Great Woods. That combined would be 59 acres, which would exceed the Commonwealth's requirement for 50. Again, the total potential units, the ballpark's about 930, which exceeds the 750 units. But again, SERPID will need to run the compliance model to confirm all of this and give us a more accurate read.
But just from a basic perspective before you move on, that if Norton Estates and the Great Woods Shopping Plaza are removed and we combine it with the Norton Glen, those two together would in theory meet the state's requirements without doing anything else.
If the numbers are correct, yes.
Okay.
And this also gives you some flexibility then. If, this is a little bit more, it's more of a buffer. At some point as we go through the process and we get compliance modeling, you could decide to shave off more. You could bring it down a bit more. I wouldn't go 250 acres, but.
Understood.
Yeah, so you have that.
I know you have more than you want to get to, so I'll stop talking.
Yeah, well, we're gonna, if you wanna take those persons, because this is gonna switch to Wheaton, which is.
Sure, yeah, if you want to just come up and, if you speak into the microphone there, they'll be able to hear you in the Zoom, otherwise they won't. Apologies, I have to make you get up. And if you can just state, And if you can just state your name and address for the record, please.
Laurel Curran, 183 Godfrey Drive, Norton. And my question is why you would remove Norton Estates from that?
It's an option. We don't have to. It's just looking at the numerical calculations of what it would be. If we included it, Norton Estates is
27 acres.
27 acres. So it would be,
You won't need the
it's
Glen.
half of the state requirements and could, in theory, if you decided that, if the board decided it didn't want to look at the Glen, that would be an option.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, real quick, is it LG Norse on, for that,
Mansfield is
Mansfield.
JC Elementary, yes.
is it JCS?
Yeah.
That's good.
And I think that was one of the comments that we got from the school committee in the last round, was that if we're gonna do this, they would prefer if we could split it up and hit both schools in theory. Again, none of this ensures any development. We talked about, Paul's talked about what would, in theory, make a site more ripe for redevelopment, but that was a request from the school committees, if feasible, that we can try and split the impact in some way. Yes?
Francis Kearns, 42 Maple Street. How many units are we talking? Are we back to above this minimum 750 again? Or is the last-
So the state requirement is 50 acres
Okay,
at 15 units an acre.
okay.
And that will, so if you do the math on that, that's your 750.
Okay.
So I think what the board is going to go through is go through what the process, we're going through the process of lot selection. So there are no parcels that have been selected or notified at this time.
Okay.
So that what you see here in that orange column here, that far right orange column,
Mhm.
is the, not to denigrate your work, Paul, but back of the envelope math in that those parcels would be 59 acres and would meet the state's requirements. And in theory, we could shave further from that as we go through this process.
Okay, but we're not shooting for like 1750. We're shooting for the low
I
end.
hate that that number ever took off because it never made sense to discuss in the first
Right
place.
there.
But I understand. We are, I think that, speaking for myself, I think I heard the comments loud and clear that we do not want to look at lots that have the potential for large developments in this way.
Yeah, my biggest concern is the water, as I've said before. You know, we're having a lot of problems with the water, and you know where I'm going with this, with the override and schools, all that stuff. Just got my tax bill. I think everybody did too.
Just opened mine today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Paul, did you want to pause before we move on? I know I had seen at least one other hand raised in the Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Mr. Hornsby, was that you looking to make a comment or a question? Not to put you on the spot here, but if you wanted to, I'll give you the opportunity to speak here.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. You know, I just wanted to chime in the fact that I'm hearing a lot of, this is, you know, ripe for redevelopment and it's open for that. I think the town kind of spoke and didn't want this. So I think the majority of people would like it to be in a place where it's not going to be redeveloped very soon.
Yes. I think that was.
So I think that's, I mean, that's, to me, I just keep hearing, oh yeah, this could be redeveloped in the next, 2, 5, 10 years, and,
I think, Steve, that was one of the points that Paul raised, in that looking at the land value versus building value, none of the properties on Mansfield Ave specifically stood out as this would be something that somebody would look at as a redevelopment opportunity. All of them had buildings that were more valuable than the land, which made them less suitable for redevelopment.
Were the buildings more valuable than what they think they could make off the land?
yeah, I just want to put that out there, because that's, something that, I'm concerned about too. I mean,
I understand your point,
everybody
definitely.
knows my point of view is I want to put it where it's not going to happen, so, but we have to put it somewhere, so, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, guys.
And just want to repeat that this was, when we had our open house, this was the number 2 vote getter. And I'm just, just honoring the process, trying to, fulfill,
Right, but the liaisons weren't invited to that, so, it was the first one I was invited to.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thanks.
Paul, did you want to speak to it? I know you were going to talk about Wheaton.
yeah.
Guess he needed a formal invite.
So Wheaton, let me just start by saying, when I was creating the idea of the open house, it was really a brainstorming session. And with that, we wanted to have a priority that created a space for everybody to feel free to put dots where they wanted to put it and not be constrained by it. And that's why when I met with people and put in the instructions, place the dots where you want. I was not anticipating a place like Wheaton getting all these dots. What I was anticipating was if people didn't want it, we had a board for people to write that they didn't want it and why. I just didn't expect it, and I didn't focus on what we call excluded land beforehand. Had I anticipated that people would have been voting like that, in hindsight, I would have done a better job of sharing the constraints with it. The challenge with Wheaton is it's clearly an excluded land. And,
What makes it excluded?
the regulation here, this was coming right from the guidelines, that there were a series of things that of properties that cannot be used. And the last one is privately owned land for education, including colleges, universities.
It talks about uses, it doesn't talk about ownership. So in theory, there are pieces that Wheaton owns that we could look at.
And
I
given
think
what
that's what you were
Foxborough,
gonna talk to
I don't
next,
think that's
correct?
Right, there are. It's not entirely clear, but I feel like if we're talking about the main campus of a college, that's
That's tough.
excluded.
Yeah.
That would be a tough one to move forward.
Is
Again,
that other lot, the next slide that you have, Paul, is that?
I have
so
a question on that. Where did Foxborough put theirs?
it was around the stadium,
Right.
not on a college campus.
Hmm.
So, but there were some dots that were put up on the, I call it the ball field site, but there's a number, the president's house is there.
That's one lot, oh my goodness.
That's one lot, it's almost 65 acres. Could we use it? How would we split it? Again, I can't tell you for certain that this is an excluded property. You still have college uses there. And, we know that we're over the minimum with the other 2 sites. So,
I think we could, it's something to think about as we go through the process. Again, we haven't selected sites, so we don't know what we're gonna want to add.
I think the people weren't really voting for the fields. They were they wanted to put it right in the common. They were after ain't gonna happen.
absolutely,
And I was
absolutely they did.
suggesting it to them for that reason.
Right.
Yeah. I could
But there were
see-
a few dots that were north of there, but absolutely, the great majority of them were right on campus.
Yeah, there were a couple, they put them in the fields, and then once they realized that,
Yeah.
that actually could happen, that if you really want to play, you're gonna have to put it right in the middle.
Yeah, and I would look at this as, unless you divided it up, which again becomes really challenging on one site, this kind of becomes the PGA property all over again.
And there's
Well,
nothing
it's a
on
little
it, so
different.
it's all.
Well, no, it's an ain't gonna happen, whereas the PGA was something likely to
Yeah.
happen.
So,
So,
I
That's
just
a
want
big
to advise on the Wheaton, and
Yeah.
there were other areas, I'm sorry the size of that, but there were other areas receiving votes, significantly less. But there were, a handful of other sites that, could be good, good sites. And in fact, in a little bit, can turn it over to Steve and Rob, who had some other interesting sites. In fact, we can do that now.
Actually, mine are these 3, to be honest. That, you know, I was surprised the voting came in that close to what my deck was saying.
You're just trying to get a little bit closer.
I'm sorry, I'm at
You have to be as close to me.
I'm having wicked back spasms, so.
I think you're
squirming in
good,
the chair.
just not, yeah.
Yeah.
So you say the three that Paul walked through, you think are three, your three?
Those are the three that I had in my deck anyways. I was kind of, when your thing came out, I was kind of, damn. But, yeah, it was so close. I think we should look a little harder at Whedon. I see the precedents and some of the other things the town can do. I don't think that would be an exclusion. So I think we should look at it. And the people that were doing that, I know you wanted to just write on the board isn't gonna happen. You're gonna have to sympathize that people had felt like things like that wouldn't be heard. And so they're going to go, they went and voted for it, ain't gonna happen spot. And that's why they put it on Whedon. And that should tell you how many people in this town want that. You know, that it was a big no-brainer.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think you should look harder at that.
Rob, didn't you also provide East Main Street? Wasn't that in your?
That was in one of my earlier decks.
Okay.
It could come back. This whole board objected to it, but this whole board objected when I suggested the shopping center too, and here you guys are putting it up.
I don't agree with that myself.
You don't?
As far as Great Woods, I don't agree with Great Woods Plaza being part of it.
I will not vote for Great Woods Plaza being included.
Yeah.
Yeah, again,
Okay.
it was
I
just,
got that before. I
put
was
it out
surprised
there
it was
for you,
back in.
that's all.
Yeah.
As also with the Great Woods version, the mobile home park. I would only want to include that if we gave the mobile home park the right to actually be there too, if we made them conforming by adding mobile home parks to the use. And I think it kind of muddies the water. I think we can achieve without the mobile home park and without Great Woods Plaza, just between Great Woods and the Glen, what we need. And my third pick off of that would be Tweave Manufacturing down in Barrelsville. So if you just pick two of those three options, that gives us our space.
I think my perspective, and we'll go through additional site selections pieces. I think that before we go and notify abutters, my position would be that we would notify abutters for more than what we need, with the understanding that some of these will not make it to town meeting, but we want them available for discussion at our public hearings.
You should, and you gotta keep in mind, you do have to get this by the public in town.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so hearing them is gonna be important. I personally do think you should, you can reduce this further, and I think you should go back and look at Whedon. I'd actually gone out and done some research on this and talking to people in other towns and things like that. I'm less sure that Whedon is excluded.
Well, I've also run this through town council.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah, and, well, I should say, and what her recommendation was to, ultimately, it's up to the state to decide.
Correct, it is.
So,
And that was the correct answer. But given some of the other things the state has already approved and precedent set, I think you're dismissing it very easily as, thinking that they won't approve it. I don't really think, I think we should explore it more.
I just wanted to point out that this was listed as excluded type of use
Yeah.
or property.
The board can ignore that guidance at its own choosing
Yes, absolutely.
and own peril. I do see you there, Laura, I think were you looking to speak?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Yes,
You should
please
share.
state your name and address for the record.
I'll give you a
Bridget Carr,
second.
Oak Street. Has anyone done a college or school or university of any sort in the state of Massachusetts for this yet?
It's
I'm
just
not
what we
aware, I think that would be a question, Paul, if there's, I'm not sure if that's something that you're aware of.
I'm not aware of it, but we can ask.
Well, I was just wondering because it seems pretty excluded to me, so I was just curious if anyone has
Seems
done
excluded,
unexcluded.
but we need to find out if it is. Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Can I just ask clarification, when you just said it looks pretty excluded?
Like,
From the
when you
language
put,
of it.
yeah, from the
Yeah.
language, it looks like we would be pretty excluded. I was just curious if anybody gotten around it yet.
Yeah.
No, I think if we wanted to, I think some part of that big parcel could be something that we approach, but when we look at it, there's nothing on it now. it, in theory, would be a property that would add to the net total that we're gonna be talking about at town meeting, where we say,
Mhm.
there's already residential on these plots.
The North Wheaton property.
Right, exactly. And, I mean, college kids need places to stay. Like, that would check a lot of, this could be done boxes, which I think is the opposite of the feedback that the people who selected Wheaton wanted. So, we can talk about it, there's nothing saying we can't talk about it.
I think we need to clear the picture, like before this goes to the town.
Oh, yeah.
The more units
We'll
you
have a
put
clear
on, the
picture.
more acreage it puts on, then people start to think it's worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Get it as close to the 50 acres and 750 as possible.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think most people were clear that they wanted the campus itself as a way to prevent it from happening. But I think the north parcel is a good option if we all want it to happen.
Mhm.
But it's got potential to be a great spot for it to happen. But
Exactly.
it does not check the box of making it not happen.
Yeah. So we can, we clearly looked at it, it was one of the vote getters from the process. I think.
What is this? Are you
Um,
guys opposed to, selections where it absolutely isn't gonna happen?
No,
Like Spack
Okay.
landfill?
that was one, I put mine on stack.
Okay.
I picked stack too.
Yeah, so, I do see somebody at the podium here, I have two hands raised in the Zoom meeting, so I'm gonna go to them first if you don't mind. So the first one up, all that shows up in the Zoom meeting, I apologize, is just the Samsung device ID. So if you can just please unmute and state your name and address for the record, please.
This is Samsung.
Hi, this is Roger Marsan, 62 Power Street.
Thank you, Mr. Marsan.
So if we could go back to the slide where you were looking at the different parcels that were including Mansfield Ave, the one where you had listed the acreage that each one of them was going to have, and the net gains for each one.
Is it this slide that you're
When
looking
you
for?
said
It might
that there
take a second.
were small parcels on Mansfield Ave, I think the total was 59 acres if you took Mansfield Ave without the
Yeah, no, if we
North
took out
Estates and without
the shopping plaza,
Brickwood
yeah.
Shopping Plaza, right? You have a total of 59 acres if you took Norton Glen and Mansfield Ave without the Norton Commons and Great Woods.
Correct.
And if we have only a 50-acre requirement, couldn't we just remove some of those small parcels so that we could get down to the 50 acres that are required by the state?
Yes, I think the goal would be to potentially reduce, but I think we would want to, speaking for myself, the board can make its own decisions as a group, but we don't want to cut it too close so the state looks at some wetland boundary and tries to ding us and put us at 49.8 or something like that and keeps us out of compliance and makes us go through the whole process again.
To add, we could cut down on one of the other sections, like Norton Glen might lose an
Right.
acre or two,
Either
and
way,
that makes
yeah.
up for a little bit more at Mansfield.
Yeah. The goal will be to refine from wherever we start, but I think if I don't think that we want to propose 50.000 acres. I think we want to, there's going to be a little bit of a margin of error, and that's something that we're just going to have to look at with the lots, and if we're going to split a lot, where does it make sense? But yeah.
I actually targeted 55 when I was doing the things.
Is there anything else that you wanted to ask, Mr. Marsan?
And I would just like to also say that if we're looking at the Wheaton College, Tim, what you were saying, that's on a piece of property that has no development, no housing on it at all right now, and that would put our net housing
Much
to the
higher.
max on that. So I'm not sure that's necessarily the route we want to go unless we're hoping that Wheaton College would never sell it to build on.
That would certainly be a potential discussion, but yeah, that'll be something for the board to consider as it moves forward.
I'd like to clarify though, I believe the votes for Wheaton were not for the open space Wheaton owns. People were putting it on the common.
There were some on the other lot.
Yeah, I know, they
I-
did, and then they got confused. Once you told people, no, this is where the common is,
But-
they're like,
but-
oh,
Yeah,
So-
the great majority were on the campus.
yeah, that's what people were trying for. You should, I probably
Yeah.
respect what the wish was.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Mercer.
thank you for your time.
And Mr. Wiggins, I see your hand raised as well in the Zoom meeting.
I'm your right, Peter J. Wiggins, and I'm at 157 Bedford Avenue, and we'll be okay.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Is it gonna be okay?
Oh, yeah.
157 is not on my list, Peter.
Thank you very much, because I lived in Norton all my life, and it's continuing to keep on growing.
You're safe, Pete.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, and please.
Hello, Beth Morrell, 50 Mansfield Avenue. One thing that I do want to note, not to beat the dead horse, but the property that is across the street, I think is incredibly dangerous and not one that should be looked at all, because I live across the street from a lot that they sold to a developer within the last few years. So I think anyone, in case there's anyone who's still thinking that they might not develop that space, if it's that you really don't want anything to be developed, 65 acres is an easy thing. Wheaton is a very small and very expensive school. I'm an alum, and they've been selling lots to developers. And so, in the spirit of what those folks obviously had wanted, I think if you put it across the street, those people will be very upset.
Yeah. No, that was why I was saying, what
Yeah.
they're trying for is put it in the common.
Yeah.
The area they know Wheaton is just
Yeah,
not gonna
and I
put it
don't
in.
think it's unlikely that Wheaton, given the opportunity, would sell some amount of that land, just because, again, I saw across the street from me was Wheaton owned woods for a long time, and I believe that's what you were in executive session about in the beginning, so, yeah, they're.
I could definitely foresee a scenario where we went to sell off a piece of that land to bring in a private partnership with a multifamily apartment developer
100%.
in about 15 seconds.
There are an
Yes.
awful lot of very old dorms still there, that were
Yes.
old when I was there, years ago, so.
So I think
Yeah.
we're,
So-
we're not talking about, Wheaton's open
Yes.
spaces, we're talking about there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
So,
just, seems like the
yeah,
keep
so-
changing.
Steve, did you want to touch on any of the other parcels that I think were on the slide before this, Paul, that you had submitted?
No,
Anything
I-
further that, I know you mentioned Barrowsville was maybe your next one.
Yeah, I think the only alternative between the picking two different parcels, it's the Glen, it's Great Woods, and then there's Tweed by Barrowsville. And if two out of those three would make a fine area for this kind of development, we'd like to get a factory cleaned up and renewed. There's a dam on the property that could be fixed up. That'd be nice to get somebody on the hook for. Yeah, it would be fitting. And it also is split school districts.
Which one is?
Tweed goes to JCS.
Okay, yes.
Which-
Okay, I was like, Tweed is split between two different school districts?
The two-
No.
yeah,
No, it makes sense.
My issue with that would be, it'd be all new housing though, new development.
would be.
And, what.
It's not on sewer.
Trying for was to put it in places where it'd be more of a trade.
Yeah.
Not increase our density. We had some places they could build it, but they'd be building on top of, replacing existing multifamily.
True, but Tweed is also not on sewer, which would restrict the development quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah. Mr. Kearns, I think you were looking to speak again.
Yeah, just one question, with the Tweed that's behind, like the Barrowsville Station,
Yes.
Yes,
that
it
one
is.
there.
The one that caught on fire a
The
couple
abandoned
years ago.
factory.
Exactly, that's what I was wondering. Now, I believe that, the dam that you wanted to redo, they would redo, that's a privately owned dam.
It's split ownership between the town and the owner,
Is it? Okay. Because I remember when they were trying to do something with that, the owner wouldn't do anything.
which is why it has not been touched.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if it would with that.
That could
Thank
happen
you.
again, though, couldn't it?
And there is a nonprofit looking to, has been looking for a while to go in there.
Well, then they should move fast. Okay, so Paul, continuing from here, is there next steps in terms of selecting parcels? We do not need to select parcels at this point.
No, but I would say the sooner the better. Unfortunately, when you see the schedule, but by next session, I'll know what that schedule is, and I'll get it to you before then. But yeah, ultimately, we need to, you know, I would suggest get the parcels selected first, because there's more timing for me and Brian to advertise those. And then, as we get those, then we're going to also need to re-examine the language that was originally proposed, especially since a couple of things were brought up at town meeting, including density bonuses and some dimensional requirements like lot sizes.
Yeah, the proposal at town that was brought forward as an amendment at town meeting was essentially fewer, bigger buildings. And we
Can I-
proposed kind of smaller buildings, so those are obviously at odds. And I think it makes sense to look at it as we look at the site selection, because some sites would not make sense for a large building.
Could I comment to that a little bit?
Please.
So as far as the building size and the lot size criteria, I think we should basically just make it match the underlying district. The building should not be out of scale with all the other parcels there. This is an overlay. If it's in a 3-story district, the building should be 3 stories. If it's 4 stories underlying, it should be 4 stories allowance. As far as the density bonuses, I don't think they're a popular thing. I don't think anybody wants to give anybody a bonus to build more multifamily.
So, things to strike from the previous version as
Simplify
we go
it?
through this.
May I ask one more question? I won't buy anyone.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me, I'm tired. Mark told me to do this, I'm just kidding. So we don't have to guarantee them sewer, do we?
No.
So wherever they, like you had just mentioned, the Tweed. So, and you had said that could be a problem, so if they build there, they're gonna have to perk somewhere for a septic.
Yes.
It's on wetlands, right there.
It's along
on
the river.
The reservoir. So no, I just wanted to make sure, so I know that we don't have to guarantee them sewer,
No.
because that's gonna put a burden on us anyways, as a ratepayers.
They do have some ponds out back for their own like leaching field stuff when it was a factory.
Okay.
I mean, they're probably well established to install a septic system out there on the grounds, but if they don't have septic, each lot has to be 40,000 square feet anyways.
Okay, yeah, just so we don't have to promise them sewer and,
No.
so, do we have to promise them water?
No.
No.
Drinking water, potable water?
Nope.
No.
We don't. So we don't have to guarantee the water mains running by the property that they're available to
Or
tie
that
in?
they haven't broken in 20 years, or, yeah.
No, I'm just wondering because I believe state law is if there's a water main running by, you have to give them the option to tie in. So, but we don't have to give them that option?
That I can't speak to.
I'd still have the option,
It's at
right?
their cost.
No, I'm just saying do we have to offer them town water and town sewer? So I'm told we don't have to offer them town sewer. Do we have to offer them town water?
We don't have to offer sewer at a site that doesn't have sewer.
Okay.
I think if
We
they
don't
went
have
to
to
a
build
site
it.
that had sewer, then they would have the opportunity to tie in at their
Right.
own cost. Does that clarify your question?
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, we don't have to offer them sewer, but do we have to offer them water, or are we gonna make them drill their own well for the project?
No, if they
There's
want
water
to tie,
back
if
there.
they want to tie into the town water supply, then they can do that, just like any other building.
Okay.
Yeah,
What
there's
if
a
the-
water main.
what if
But
there
we
isn't
don't have
water-
we don't have a requirement to do anything for them.
Okay. What if there isn't a water main running by?
Then there isn't.
Then
We don't have to build
Okay.
There
it.
is though, just to be
Alright.
clear. So
Thank you very much.
that's the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good clarifying question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we do not need to select parcels tonight, but obviously giving guidance to Paul, if we feel like we want to give soft guidance, firm guidance. I think the soft guidance that we've given tonight, and anybody can speak differently if they feel differently, is that Glen plus Mansfield Ave taking away Norton Estates and the commercial plaza is our soft plan.
Yes, and those other 2 parcels that are in the commercial plaza, also like that, McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, they're separate lots, but
Yeah, take them out. I see what you're
yeah,
saying.
it's part of
So
that.
take
The corner.
okay, take those parcels out as well.
It just stop right at the large new.
Yeah, parcels, take them out, so it's just go down to.
Stop at the 40B basically.
Yeah.
Start with the 40B, okay.
And and to my point, for additional parcels to potentially notice when we get to that point, I think Barrowsville makes sense.
I sent a map to Paul already that has Tweed plus a couple more parcels out
Yeah.
front. It just goes a little over 25.
Do we,
No, just a question on that, the rules here. You talk about suitability. If Tweed does have a lot of wetlands and things, or something like out in the way, does that kind of knock it back out?
I roughly measured it, and that's where if we put a couple acres over, like if Barrowsville Station's included, it's not 25 exactly. It's like 28. So like it gets a little bit of wetlands.
Yeah.
and to that point, we're not looking to put all of these in the overlay. The message, loud and clear, is get it as small as possible and restrictive as possible. So this is only adding options in case if at some point we notice and Norton Glen's under one owner, and they say, you know what, I've been looking to redevelop this and I get 3 people on the phone, then we can make a decision if we want to continue with that, if we want to change course. So that's the reason that we would notice additional parcels beyond Mansfield Avenue and Glen. So, I don't think straw vote, does anybody feel like they want to do the official noticing now, or do we want to wait and vote in a future session? If anybody wants to vote now, you can obviously make a motion, we can't stop you, so.
You sound like you almost want the motion.
No.
I'm fine with taking a moment to wait on it, or
Yeah.
for our next session. That's
I was
fine.
thinking,
Sure.
Here's something that sounds like you're asking for.
I just see a hand raised in the Zoom meeting. I believe that's Mr. Noble.
Yep.
If you want to just unmute and just state your name and address for the record to make our minutes easier.
Yes, so Brandon Noble, 1 Gaffney Farm Drive. Just a quick question. You guys started to touch upon it towards the end, but there really was no discussion about the, I forget the official term, but kind of the written language. At town meeting, there was, an article to talk about parcels and then what was going to be passed for the language. I just want to make sure. It seemed like there was a lot of disagreement with what was written, so I just wanted to ask if that was going to be brought up again.
That will definitely be brought up again and
Okay.
adjusted before it goes in front of anybody at town meeting.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And but yeah, I think that one of the things, Paul, that I'll mention now is, I think how the articles were separated at town meeting was not helpful for the discussion. So if I'm not sure if we're required to separate the overlay district map and the text into different articles, but if we're not, I'd like them as one. So that we can discuss, this is what we want to do, what we're proposing, and this is the language that accompanies it, rather than, let's talk about the language and we'll talk about where it's going to go later, or vice versa.
So don't you guys still have one tabled? It's just tabled right now? It's not working on?
Correct.
Okay. Somebody else does too.
Okay.
No.
So is there anything further that we wanted to discuss as part
What
of
is
this
that?
process now? I think, Paul, we've got the timeline up here, that our placeholder articles are due at our next meeting, basically.
And I'd like to clarify the other minutes you're talking about, because you were earlier talking about how we might have derived them. I went and asked him that. That was Jim Chavit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I went and asked him how he worked that. He basically took the law, took what you guys had written, took out everything that your plan was giving the state that we didn't have to, and then just left the rest. It was that simple. That was how he did it.
He also removed bylaws from the jurisdiction
Yep,
of the
anything we
planning
didn't
board.
have to do. That's correct.
He did a bunch of things. I think in broad strokes, his point was clear. He preferred language that pointed towards larger buildings over smaller buildings, and again, did strip away a whole bunch of stuff.
Including commercial uses.
Yeah,
which was
Jim's welcome to participate in any of these hearings, and otherwise we have all of his submitted comments that we can look at and review. And I plan to as we go through that language.
Listen, we should cut him a break right now.
Yeah, we have his comments from before. They're part of what we'll look at. So placeholder articles will be next meeting, and we'll be looking to submit to FinCom mid to late February. So more to come. Paul, is there anything else with the schedule that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think I've spoken enough.
Okay.
I don't have anything else to add, so.
Anything else anybody wanted from the board wanted to add before we move on to any further discussions? And we do have at least a couple of things that we wanted to circle back on here. Okay, so we'll continue our discussion and look to have placeholder articles to submit for the warrant at our next session. Okay. Thank you again. I'll say to the members of the Select Board and Finance Committee who've joined us as, I'll say liaisons from the different boards to increase communication as we go through this article. Thank you again, everybody. So back to boring planning board stuff, I'll say here are the 3 bills that I mentioned at the start of the meeting, which I'll pass around. The larger one, which is for the zoning recodification, is through a grant. It is not from the main town budget. The other item I wanted to discuss was minutes. I do have one set of minutes here, which is from our December 17th hearing. But obviously Brian had sent over a large swath of minutes that had been building up over the past few months. Speaking for myself, I'm not ready to vote on all of those sets of minutes. Does anybody else feel that they are? Laura, your face said it all.
Yeah. Hell no.
So,
If we could break it up into just manageable chunks.
yes. I was going to suggest that. I think we have maybe 6 meetings as with this constitution of the board. I think if we can try to break them up into chunks of 5 or 6, does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, there were 32 of them, I think.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Should we just take them in order so that we're not all looking
That
at?
was what I was going to suggest, yeah. Brian, would it be possible just to go through and sort them by date into like groups of 5 or 6? And then we'll take them in batches and work through them in sequence. And that way, everybody can go, okay, these are the 5 minutes that we're gonna look at tonight, rather than feeling like they need to be prepared for all 30. Okay. And as speaking specifically for the minutes of December 17th, were those in the batch, Brian?
They were separate from Paul.
They were separate from Paul, thank you. Breaking those minutes aside from the big batch, is everybody prepared to vote on the minutes of December 17th this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 17th, 2024.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion from Laura and a second from Jim, and an assist from Rob, which doesn't count for anything.
No, it was just noise. Go ahead.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so the minutes of December 17th are approved, and we can move on with that. Is there any, I believe that concludes all the items that we had at the start of our agenda here. Is there anything else that we wanted to bring up at the open session?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any further discussion?
That would take time.
Hearing none, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good rest of
Good night,
the
everyone.
It was going to be.
Thank you, everyone.
Night, Peter.
Night, Steve of the gang.
Oops.